Hi everyone. So I wanted to put together a video for you guys since we don't have class on Wednesday. This way you guys can get started and start exploring the files in absence of our regular meeting time, and that way we're still kind of on track for Friday's class. So the first thing you're going to do is go to the class blog, of course, and go to the Coccyx site part 2 and click on that. And it's going to start you out with a file, coccyx.zip. Um, and this is going to download your start file. Here it is. You'll notice that when you open this up, when you unzip it, that it's a little more complex than the slapstick file. Of course, this is a more complex site and more analogous to what you would use for, say, a portfolio site or an inventory of things in our case. And so we're getting a little closer to what you might be able to expect if you were going to build a more comprehensive site. We're going to be building a site. Some of it will be working, some of it will not. But it would be much easier to imagine this getting turned into a full-blown site as opposed to something like the slapstick that we just use to explore code. We're still going to be using this to explore code, but again, it's a little more comprehensive. So the first thing we're going to do is drag the index file into Google Chrome. And this is what you have. So this is the index file. This is the home page. There are our rollover files from before that I showed you in class. There is a navigation bar. This is what it looks like in its current state. It's ugly as all get up. There's a reason for that. I don't want you to get comfortable with the way it looks. I want you to change it. I want you to make it unugly. And so I've made it as ugly as possible so that you will change it. The other thing I've done, which is adding to the ugliness, is I've added border to all the elements, all the HTML elements, all the divs, everything, so you can see why things are behaving the way they are. So this site title, for example, it has a red border around the margin. This is what the invisible size will say is. So everything has a border, so you can tell where elements start and stop, how they're stacked, what they're in. You can see the site title and the subtitle are stacked inside header div. Remember that you can access developer tools, use your little inspection magnifying glass icon. You can roll over things. This will give you a good idea of why things are behaving how they are. For those of you who don't remember, it's Option Command I on a Mac. You can also go view developer tools. So we can use this to select any element, say the header, for instance. Click on it. The header is everything up here. We can isolate that, and we can go down here. I want to make note of this. This tells you all the dimensions for the element you clicked on. It tells you this is the box model. So typically when we're structuring a page, and you guys will find more about this out on a Code Academy, but when we're structuring a page, it really is just a collection of boxes, and it's a kind of a balancing act. You order things around, you control boxes by their padding and their margin, and then their position, and that's how we arrive at a page like this. You guys will discover all this, but I wanted to note that down here at the very bottom of styles, it gives a graphic interpretation of what is what. You can roll over the element. You can see if there's padding. There's no padding. It's got a border of 2 pixels and a margin of 50 pixels up top and 20 at the bottom. So it's a graphical user interface for all these numbers up here. Same information, just displayed a different way. So anyway, we've got that. You can see what it looks like. The next thing we want to do is drag and drop this into Text Wrangler. And you can see the structure. This should all look very familiar, even though it may look a little more complex, and I suppose it is because they're divs and classes and IDs and everything. It really is fundamentally no different than what you guys encountered with the slapstick code. So I've included as many notes as I can, these non-rendering / asterisk and then closed with an asterisk forward slash. These don't render, they're just little notes for you. I tried to explain stuff as clearly or give little hints anywhere I could. So you can scroll down, you can see the body, the background color, everything has a border. If you want to shut those off, you can simply just edit it, click none, save. We'll go back to this and refresh it. And that got rid of one of our borders somewhere in the main header. So anyway, you're going to go through a process of that. The other thing I want to mention in here is there are images. These are called sprites, and sprites are a technique for condensing the amount of images your browser has to ask the server for. This isn't as important when we're working locally. In fact, it's not important they're there, but if you think about it, if you're on your cell phone, every time you have to request new information, it kind of slows things down. And it's no different on a computer when you're asking for things over the internet. If you have a slow connection and there's more requests, HTTP requests as they're known, then it's going to make for a slower loading web page. Not, again, anything we would normally worry about for a site this small, but it's best practice to condense images down as much as possible. We're kind of in a middle ground where each image has a rollover state, and you'll notice these are the same. This is one item, one single JPEG, and they demonstrate this displays both the rollover state right here and the at rest state in one image. And what we're doing is in the CSS file, let me find it real quick. Here we go. So here's the item figure. This is our figure item 01. That's us, right? So the hover position, the background position changes to -200 pixels. What it's actually doing is moving this whole image over. So when I roll over, this area is acting like a viewfinder, and it's sliding the image a -200 pixels to the right, so that it's just sliding over to expose 200 pixels by 200 pixels, and then when we go back to that rest state, it slides it over. Seems a little complicated, I know, to explain over the internet, but there is on our page, on our blog at Class Resources, there's a good explanation of it right here, CSS Sprite Best Practices. It will give you all sorts of information about why we're doing it. Sprites get far more complex. This is one for Angry Birds where it contains every single character in several states, and then it simply just uses CSS positioning to move it around. So there's a visible area, a hidden area, and then when you roll over, it just swaps the visible area and the hidden area. Again, much more information on it, but for another time. So we'll go back to this. So I want to make something very clear. You guys are designing with code. Normally you would be designing something with a plan. You would design something in InDesign or Photoshop or Illustrator, and then you would make it happen through coding. We're going to be doing the reverse. We're going to be designing through the code. So you can let things develop organically. You can, much like you did with the slapstick, you can change the background color and decide you like that, and then find a complementary color for the text and decide you like that. You don't have to design this beforehand. It can develop just through trial and error. Again, usually it's the other way around, but since our goal is to learn as much of this HTML and CSS markup as we can, You just need to explore and let things kind of happen. So you can go back to Text Wrangler and begin changing things, decide you want to do, I don't know, maybe you want to change the background color like I said, and then you want to add different images. You're going to have to add your own images, and that can be saved for Friday if you want. If you want to just leave the placeholder images in here, you can certainly do that. In any case, trial and error. Just make minor adjustments, see if you like it, see if it functions the way you want to, and then go from there. So we're going to go back to the blog so we can explain what all you have to do. There is the inventory page, which is this page right here, the index.html, right? This is where all of your items with their hover states are going to be. You need to have 16 to 30 items in your inventory, depending on how many you want to display and how you want to display. Obviously, if you wanted to do 5 across, that would be fine, but it might look a little weird to do 16 and have one just down here at the bottom. Maybe it's better to do 20, 25, whatever, but it needs to be within 16 to 30 images. The next thing you will have is a sample page, and we'll go to, the sample page. So this would be analogous to a project page, something more detailed images. Maybe somebody gets wild and makes this a slider and there's several images. I don't know, that might be a little more advanced. And then at the bottom you'll have your grid of images, so you can go back. So you'll have a couple of those, right? So a sample page and then another sample page, and then you'll have a page, which in here is simply page. And you can find it right here. So this might be similar to an about page. It could be an author page, a description of the collection, however you want to define it, but it needs to handle some additional information, right? So that's all you have. The rest of the stuff, the rest of the things are just placeholders. They can be, you can remove them if you don't want to include more stuff. If you want to pretend that they are categories, or maybe page 5 just says the word contact, again, analogous to like a portfolio site. You might have an about page, which is page 3, a blog could be page 4. However you want to play it, it can be totally pretend. And you will develop this over the course of the next couple of weeks, and then you will post it to the server. But for now, you just need to start playing around. And I'll show you, I spent a couple hours playing around last night. This is something I came up with. So I want to make it, the reason why I want to show you guys this is this is just through styling the CSS. There, in mine, I didn't add any new divs. I didn't fundamentally change the way things behave. This was simply through changing, say, the box shadow or the border or the background color or the text color, and selecting a nice pairing of Google fonts. So fundamentally, nothing changed about this page from this page, or I guess more specifically this page. But this is the same page, just styled differently. Again, with no major HTML revisions, no major CSS revisions, just using what is inherent in this file and making some design choices. So know that that is entirely possible. You don't have to add a lot of stuff. It's not actually that complex. You just kind of need to explore what's there. I think that is it. So just to reiterate, the images should be incorporated by the 21st or the 22nd, depending on which section you're in, and then we're going to have a full posted site to your folder on the server that works with all working links by the 23rd, the 24th. That's that. Holler if you have questions. Thanks.